Hello everyone, and welcome to the first Film Fights Remaster. I'm sure my Day 1 fans remember this one, Dawn of Justice v Civil War. This was the first video I ever posted on the Timrex channel. As with most first tries, it was unpolished to say the least. You know, it takes time to establish a style and find your own voice. Now that I feel comfortable with my channel and created my own dank meme review style, I figured to go back and freshen up my older stuff. The writing and content is still pretty good and holds up pretty well, but needs more spice. And by spice, I mean memes. The script will remain the same for the most part, maybe with a few tweaks here and there. And also, the originals will stay up. They're not going anywhere. Having them serves as a reminder of where I came from. Greatness from small beginnings, as Sir Francis Drake put it. Now, with all that being said, let's take a look at these two very similar action movies. The DC v Marvel debate has been going on for decades, but rarely has it ever been so heated as it was in 2016, with both DC under Warner Bros. And Marvel under Disney creating a cinematic universe in a shared continuity. Of course, Marvel has been doing this for over a decade with the release of Iron Man in 2008, while DC has been playing catch-up ever since they slapped us with Man of Steel. There is no better moment to compare the two than 2016, with both sides releasing a movie about their superheroes fighting one another. On one hand, you have Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, and on the other is the Cap v Iron Man fight in Captain America Civil War. So, which did the superhero fight movie better, Dawn of Justice or Civil War? Let's take a look. During the events of Man of Steel, sorry Christopher Reeves, we failed you with this one, Superman recklessly leveled Metropolis in an effort to defeat the antagonist General Zod. Bruce Wayne, being in Metropolis at the time, and seeing all the destruction, decides that Superman is a threat to human civilization, so he concocts a plan to kill Superman in order to save humanity. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor's son, Lex Luthor, decides to frame Superman in order to have them fight. Dawn of Justice addresses one of my biggest problems with Man of Steel. The Clark Kent that we should all know and love just recklessly destroys a city without any remorse. This gives Bruce Wayne a great motivation to take down this monstrous alien, so I'm glad that this film takes advantage of that huge flaw, retroactively making the DCEU better. Not good by any means, let's not kid ourselves here, but better. Although there's a good premise for a movie, and it built up from Man of Steel, nothing else about it actually works. I'll break down all the characters later on, but Lois Lane's painfully obvious story makes no sense and is painfully obvious. Lex Luthor's story makes no sense. There's the Senator subplot that literally involves Luthor's pee as a major plot point. Wonder Woman is just a cameo who's only here to set up the Justice League movie. And not only is she a cameo, but she's a cameo who introduces other cameos. It's cameoception. Sorry I had to bring you into this, Nolan. You know I love your work. I feel like in Dawn of Justice, there's a good story being told. It's in there somewhere. This is Batman fighting Superman. Unlimited potential. But it gets bogged down by dumb side stories and character motivations that make little to no sense, but I'll get there soon enough. So ultimately, we get a good premise for a movie, Batman fighting Superman, who wouldn't love that? But it falls flat on execution. Now for Civil War, the story starts off with half of the Avengers preventing Rumlow from the Winter Soldier, now Crossbones, from getting a certain chemical or whatever it is. That part isn't explained much as it's not too important to the overall story. In the fight, Scarlet Witch accidentally blows up half a building. Because of the destruction, it's decided that the Avengers should be placed under the supervision of the United Nations by the Sokovia Accords. Yeah, remember that city that got Shrek'd by Ultron in the second Avengers movie? Well, now their actions, well, more specifically Tony's actions, are coming back to haunt all of them. Captain America and his allies agree that they would be better at controlling themselves than the UN would. After refusing to cooperate with the Accords, Iron Man and his crew are pitted against Steve and his supporters. The dispute is made even worse when Steve's old friend Bucky, now the Winter Soldier, is accused of bombing the UN when world leaders were signing the Accords. What's really interesting about comparing these two movies is that in Batman v Superman, Batman is the main protagonist, and he's going after the one who causes destruction, but thinks he can handle himself without government regulation. In Captain America Civil War, the roles are reversed. The protagonists are the ones who don't want regulation, and think they can govern themselves better than bureaucrats, and the antagonists are the ones trying to put them under control. Ultimately though, I think Captain America Civil War has a better story. It's certainly presented better, has less distractions like Wonder Woman literally playing trailers. So, since there's much less of that garbage, Civil War has a better story. The driving forces behind both films are the characters. We watch them to see one of our favorite characters pitted against another one of our favorite characters. It's one worldview, motivation, and set of beliefs versus another. So, what's the conflict between Steve and Tony Stark? Well, first, I think everyone understands Captain America. He's an old-fashioned, optimistic, and highly moral man who often finds himself in a world that's moved beyond his values. It may sound cheesy, but Cap is that beacon of light in the dark modern world we find ourselves in. But just like Agent Coulson said, well, before he died, some people might just need a little old-fashioned. Some of our most beloved stories are about how people grow to face a challenge or maybe fall, but some of the very best stories are not about change, but men who refuse to change in a world that's pressuring them. Captain America is the perfect example of this. This aspect of Steve's character is the focus point of the Winter Soldier, which plays an important role here in Civil War. Steve just saw what an organization could do with immense, unchecked power and the wrong people behind it. What will make the Avengers any different than Project Insight after the Sokovia Accords? There's a massive weapon being wielded by people with agendas, and sometimes those agendas may be downright immoral. Hydra masked itself as S.H.I.E.L.D. What's to stop other ill-intentioned leaders from using superheroes once the Accords are signed? The UN wants the Avengers under their supervision, but he knows that they would be better off on their own. S.H.I.E.L.D. believed that it was necessary to give up your freedom in order to create a safer world. Hydra used this agenda of safety at the cost of liberty in an attempt to take over the world. Cap sees that the politicians at the UN are just that, politicians. They have their own agendas that the Avengers would be fighting for. They'd have to fight for causes they didn't believe in or stand down when the UN didn't want their involvement in a given situation. This conflict is very relevant to the battle we see today between individual liberty and supposed safety. Cap obviously believes in self-determination, and he sees the same situation playing out between the Avengers and the Sokovia Accords. So even when under the pressure of his friends and the law, Steve understands that he has to take the moral high ground. I love the speech that Sharon Carter gives at her great-aunt Peggy's funeral.
And she said, compromise where you can. But where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move. It is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
These strong words represent Steve's whole character in both the Winter Soldier and Civil War. As for Tony Stark, he's technically the antagonist of Civil War, but he, like Steve, is trying to do the right thing. Just as Steve's experience from the Winter Soldier comes into play here, so does Tony's experience from Iron Man. His partner and good friend Obadiah Stane was dealing weapons under the table to terrorists while he lived in luxury. Although Tony didn't know about Stane's dealings, he never took responsibility for his company's actions until returning back from his capture. His lack of caring and intervention caused countless deaths. Now jump forward to Civil War, where he feels a much stronger sense of responsibility. After the death of multiple people in Nigeria that Scarlet Witch caused, he wants to put the Avengers under the direct supervision of the UN. Stark commits to that stance after being confronted by the mother of a man who was killed during the fight in Sokovia between the Avengers and Ultron. Stark blames himself for the man's death, and sees the Accords as a way to right his wrongdoings. It's like the first film all over again. His lack of responsibility caused yet another death from his point of view. Now he has to make up for it and take measures to prevent more events like this. Both sides get their say, and both sides bring up some good points. We understand where Steve and Tony are coming from, so it makes their conflict all the more interesting when they start fighting each other. The Russo brothers know that the philosophical and moral fights are far more interesting than the physical ones. They may not make great trailer material like seeing Spider-Man swing into action, but these moral battles are what get us engaged and keep us thinking about the film long after the screen goes black, and ultimately bring all the different character arcs in the MCU together. Unfortunately, this isn't the case for Batman v Superman. For the most part, both Batman and Superman's motivations are inconsistent and sloppy. You can probably credit this problem to Dawn of Justice being only the second entry in the DC universe, so unlike Marvel, where we know all the characters and what they stand for, we really don't know anything about those who are fighting. For most of the movie, I understood Batman's reasoning for wanting to kill Superman. Unlike Captain America and his allies, Superman is capable of wiping out the human race. He even caused billions of dollars of property damage and killed thousands just to get a few meaningless yet good-looking punches on Zod. I really like the scene between Bruce and Alfred when Bruce explains that if there is only a 1% chance, then it has to be taken as an absolute certainty. Dawn of Justice brings up a huge problem with this interpretation of Superman, which is his blatant disregard for human life. Bad film writers don't truly understand Superman's weakness. Maybe they'll say, oh, of course it's kryptonite, but that would be wrong. Superman's main weakness is humanity. He loves people so much, and villains know to take advantage of this. But as for this interpretation, it's kryptonite because stupid. Anyways, two things ruined Batman for me and blurred his motivations. We all saw this one coming. Roll the clip.
You're letting him kill Martha. Why did you say that name?
It makes no sense that Superman would first of all refer to his mom by her first name. But besides that, just because Clark's mommy has the same name as Bruce's mommy, Bruce decides to spare him? DC fanboys will defend this by trying to argue, oh, it showed Batman Superman's humanity by showing Batman that he has a human mom whomst he cares about. But Batman should have already assumed that Superman had relationships with other humans. Of course he has people who cares about him. And what happened to the part about Superman needing to be taken as an absolute certainty? He can destroy mankind. This 180-degree turn in Bruce's point of view was completely unjustified. Unjustified? Okay. The second thing that undermines this character for me is the finale with Doomsday. Batman believed Superman to be a threat because he pointlessly brought the fight with Zod to Metropolis and leveled buildings as opposed to keeping the battle in the countryside where no one but cows would be harmed. Batman ends up doing the exact same thing in the fight with Doomsday. It was established that Doomsday got stuck on an unpopulated island, but Batman, being the genius that he is, brings this destructive monster into the middle of Gotham City to fight, because that's where he left his kryptonite spear. Of course, this results in large sections of the city getting completely leveled, to the point where even Superman is impressed. This is even worse than what he did before. Therefore, Batman becomes the biggest hypocrite and extremely inconsistent. What's also inconsistent is how the rest of the world views Batman. Bruce Wayne says that he's been Batman for 20 years, but when anyone else talks about him, they describe him as a vigilante who just causes more trouble.
Trouble with a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool.
Keep in mind, this is after he fought the Joker and probably saved Gotham countless times. This isn't Batman Year 1 for Pete's sake. It's been 20 years. People should view him as Gotham's savior by now. Also, I don't like how Batman actually kills people. It seems like a drastic change to what is traditionally part of Batman's character, which is never killing. Maybe this can become an integral piece to understanding Batfleck's character. But the only apparent reason for this change is to make this version be as cool and edgy as Nolan's, to appeal to those middle school tweens who like feeling dark and edgy. That's the best we can assume, considering it's never brought up in the film itself or utilized in any way. Alfred, his lifelong caretaker and father figure, doesn't even bring it up. It just happens and no one cares. I didn't mean to go on a rant there, but there are a lot of problems that need pointing out, and I'm gonna do it. Now, more on Superman. Even though his name is in the title, we don't get to see much of him or learn much about him. This is yet another huge problem with Man of Steel. We don't know who Henry Cavill's Superman is. We just know who he isn't. He's not Christopher Reeve's Superman or anything else we've seen before. Zack Snyder was so focused on separating his interpretation from previous ones that he forgot to give him a personality. Kinda counterintuitive. We don't know how he feels about those who worship him or those who hate him. We don't know how he feels about killing, which is odd, considering it's the main reason why Batman wants him dead. Superman gives a loud yell after killing Zod, but he doesn't seem to mind the slaughter of the citizens of Metropolis or those mercenaries from the beginning. So where he stands is very unclear. The main problem with both of these characters is that we don't know who they are, what they stand for, and where their beliefs come into conflict. Both have killed countless people in their battles, both are pointlessly dark and brooding. They just be like, I don't like how you dish out vigilante justice. Oh, I don't like how you dish out vigilante justice. Let's fight. When the two have a verbal argument, it just seems like two hypocrites staring each other in the face. Oh yeah, Lois Lane is in this, and she's so awkwardly utilized. The movie seems to have no idea what to do with her. She spends most of the film investigating Lex Luthor and some bullets that were used by the militants in Africa, even though we the audience already know he's the one pulling the strings. If it wasn't obvious by now, the opposing sides in Captain America Civil War are handled far better than in Dawn of Justice. In Civil War, both sides have clear, rational, and consistent motivations and character traits. We the audience are able to see where both Tony Stark and Steve Rogers are coming from because they've already been established and grown in previous movies. While I agree with Batman for most of Dawn of Justice, he changes for a really stupid reason, he's a hypocrite, and he kills countless people. The characters are the heart and soul of any movie, and Captain America Civil War definitely has better characters. The antagonists, the bigger bads if you will, in both movies are actually nearly identical. Both villain plots in Dawn of Justice and Civil War are about someone who wants to see the two main characters fight one another, and they take steps in order to get them closer to fighting. Both villains also get extremely lucky that their convoluted plans actually work. In Batman v Superman, Lex tries to frame Superman and make him look evil to convince the public, and especially Batman, that he's a threat. Luckily for him, Bruce already sees Superman as a threat and already wants to kill him. And even luckier, both Bruce and Lex initiate their plans about 2 years after the events of Man of Steel. I don't know why they waited for so long, especially Batman. If Superman's such a threat, why wait to kill him? I have no idea why Lex decided to create Doomsday 2. It's to kill Superman, right? I thought that's what Batman was for. But if anything, creating a giant world-destroying monster would cause the two to team up instead. There are tons of things that are unclear about Lex's character. We know from one of his really annoying speeches that he hates God or gods and doesn't believe them to be all good. He sees Superman coming down as an all-powerful and good god, but wants to show the world that he isn't. Okay, cool, but isn't the population already split on this? There are a lot of people who see Superman as dangerous, as well as those who look up to him. So what, he just wants to throw more fire onto the Superman debate? And how does bombing the Capitol building further his goals? And why does this motivation cause Lex to push Superman to fight Batman? Although, that would have happened anyways. While Zemo gets as lucky as Lex, we do get to learn more about him and we actually understand why he's doing what he's doing. Like the woman that Stark met after a speech, Zemo lost his family in Sokovia during Age of Ultron. He too blames the Avengers for this and sets out to get his revenge. Zemo learns how to control Bucky, who's still affected by Hydra's mental conditioning, and he finds out about an entire squad of super soldiers that he can control. Even though Zemo gets Cap and Stark to fight over the fate of Bucky, they were already battling with each other over the Sokovia Accords. But Zemo does get to put the final nail in the coffin by revealing that, while being controlled by Hydra, Bucky murdered Stark's parents. This discovery pushes Iron Man over the edge, leading to a more personal battle between him, Cap, and Bucky. I will give Zemo one more point though. The film was able to use him along with Black Panther to deliver a message about revenge. Zemo grew consumed by his lust for vengeance and was pushed to do unspeakable things. Black Panther also gets caught up by his thirst for revenge against Bucky after his father, King T'Chaka, was killed in the bombing that Bucky was framed for. Unlike Zemo, T'Challa decides to control himself in the end instead of anger controlling him once he finally confronts Zemo, the real bomber. Even though neither of their plans make much sense, I do have to give this one to Civil War, simply because Zemo does contribute to the conflict between Captain America and Iron Man. He has clear motivations for why he does what he does, and I somewhat sympathize with him. Also, a pretty good moral lesson is squeezed out of him. Since at their very core, they're both action movies, it makes sense to determine which movie has better action and is overall more entertaining. Starting with Civil War, it has a lot of great action scenes throughout the entire film. There's an intense opening, a great car chase sequence, the awesome clash between the opposing factions, and a very personal and well choreographed final battle. Even when there wasn't any punching and kicking going on, I'm still engaged by the ongoing moral battle between Steve and Tony. But even with this heavy conflict, Civil War never forgets to have fun. There's a lot of funny dialogue and some truly hysterical scenes. Sometimes there's such a sense of lighthearted fun that you can't help but smile. Now, on to Dawn of Justice. I know I've been trashing this movie a lot, but to be honest, there are some great action scenes. Batman gets a thrilling fight scene with Lex's men towards the end of the movie. I already stated how he pointlessly kills people and how it's never brought up, but oh well. The battle between Batman and Superman is short and doesn't make a ton of sense, but it is exciting. It's ruined by the infamous Martha scene, but at least there is some action.
Martha was an average dog. She went and.
Why did you say that name? Why did you say that name?
Now, this is the part where I start criticizing again. A lot of people I know find Batman v Superman to be extremely boring. Not much happens in the first half, and the conflict between the heroes isn't well written enough to keep you invested. Again, they're just both hypocrites looking at each other in the face. It also doesn't help that Snyder takes everything so seriously to the point of parody. Only rarely does any levity come, maybe with the exception of Lex, but he's not funny no matter how hard he tries to be. The ending fight with Doomsday isn't impressive either. It's just a ton of CGI spewing into your eyeballs. And the color palette is black, gray, and orange. Then there's just stupid decision after stupid decision. I'm not enjoying the action as much as I'm cringing at how idiotic the characters are being. Action may be well choreographed or have groundbreaking special effects, but if I don't care about the characters, then I'm not going to be invested. Obviously, once again, I have to say Civil War did a better job. None of the action conflicted with the characters, there's plenty of comedy to keep the mood fun, and there's more than enough action to keep me entertained. Okay, so I went over how both Dawn of Justice and Civil War went about in creating a jaw-dropping superhero fight film. So is Cap vs. Iron Man or Batman vs. Superman better? The winner is Captain America Civil War. The story carries major themes from The Winter Soldier, the action's really well done, the comedy is hilarious, and I'm able to sympathize with the villain. It's such an enjoyable flick to watch. Batman v Superman, on the other hand, not so much. The main issue is the characters. The characters are such an integral part of any movie, especially a superhero movie, so if they're not done well, then they become the lethal problem. With the exception of Batman, nobody has any clear motivation for doing what they do. But sadly, even he backslides by the end. Maybe they can defeat Doomsday, but they can't defeat bad writing. Congratulations to Civil War, our first winner. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to please leave a like and subscribe. See you next week.